This is Between the Leap and the Land. I'm Renita Joy Smith, executive coach, facilitator, and someone who has been living this work in real time. The show is about the messy middle, the space between who you've been and who you're becoming. Let's get into it. So you know how they say comparison is a thief of joy? So I want to push back on that a little bit because comparison at least feels factual, right? You see the thing, you measure yourself against it, albeit unfairly, but there is something to point at, a tangible thing to compare yourself to. Perception doesn't give you that. Perception is your brain building a whole case out of evidence that doesn't exist. And it's quieter than comparison, and it's meaner because perception says I can't move until I figure out the right move to make based off what everyone is thinking about me. And so you don't move. You scan, you calculate, you run scenarios in your head about people who haven't said a word to you, or you're interpreting nonverbals, or if they have said something, it's veiled comments, and you're building a whole narrative around it. And that constant scanning is like wearing a wet jacket. It's heavy, it's tight, it's uncomfortable, it's hard to breathe, and it's a long way from what joy feels like. So I've had at this point countless coaching conversations or people coming up to me after a workshop, and there are two big themes that come out: perception and permission. People want permission to do a variety of things. Permission to try, to speak up, to contribute, to experiment, to apply for the thing, to be more of, to be less of, to have confidence where they already know, just permission to know if it's allowed. But here's what I found. Permission can even get clear airtime until perception is handled first, because our brains are busy constantly running surveillance on what everyone might be thinking, and there's no bandwidth left for what do I actually want to do. So let me tell you about the yellow blazer. I love yellow. It's my power color. I look good in it. And it took me an embarrassing number of years to buy a yellow blazer, like way too long. Not because I couldn't find one, but because my brain had built an entire obstacle course between me and a piece of clothing. Here was the narrative in my head. Am I allowed to wear yellow? Will they think it's too bold? What will people think if I show up in this? Is this being too loud? What if they think I'm being too aggressive? What if they think I think too much of myself? What if they don't take me seriously? What if they don't want to hire me? The what ifs, the theys, the people, none of them had names. None of them had faces. They were just a tribunal I invented and then tried to satisfy. And if I probed deeper, that tribunal was really just voices of old bosses, society, cultural scripts, narratives, social media noise, on and on and on, all knitted together into a they that never actually existed. So one day when the voices got too annoying, quite frankly, and my desire to wear this color increased just enough, I said, forget it. I want the blazer. So I bought it. I wore it and I braced myself for the fallout. What I got instead? Compliments. Girl, that's your color. You look amazing. Not a single person in the room was thinking what my brain had spent years telling me what they'd think. And if they were, they didn't tell me about it. All I heard was verifiable data that I looked great in it. So here's what actually matters. I had no way of knowing what anyone's perception was because no one had said anything contrary. My hypotheses were just that, stories my brain made up in the absence of data. I use this illustration a lot. Picture is 5 people in a room. Now, if I walk into a meeting wearing that beautiful yellow blazer, and I think about what 5 people might be perceiving. One person could be thinking the jacket is cute. One could absolutely hate it. One is wondering why I chose yellow instead of red. One is wondering if they could pull it off. And one is thinking about lunch and completely indifferent. So whose perception am I supposed to satisfy and listen to? The math doesn't math. There's way too many variables. I cannot make everyone happy. It is an impossible task. And then that's what really begins to click. If you can't control all the variables, the only calculus that actually works is whether the choice lines up with my own value system. That becomes the guiding light. Now, let me tell you what I see when I coach whole teams, because I have a view that most people don't get. I see the full cast of characters. So I was coaching someone. I'll call him Bert. Bert told me, Ernie is always so knowledgeable. The room listens to them. I'm not sure that folks in the room listen to me. Then I sit down with Ernie, and Ernie says, I'm afraid of speaking in the room because I'm thinking I'm talking too much and no one wants to listen, but people listen to Bert, though. Let that sit for a second. The person being admired is the same person convinced they're being judged. And this is not a one-off thing. This is a pattern so consistent, I could set a clock by it. Everyone is pointing at everyone else going, they're looking at me. And the truth is, everybody is so busy worrying about their own performance that nobody is running the evaluation your brain told you was happening. It's like that meme of Spider-Man pointing at Spider-Man. It's you, it's you, it's you, it's you. And everyone's actually just the same. And instead of just asking each other what's going on, people will spend months studying each other from across the room, observing, theorizing, building entire narratives about someone's intentions based on a facial expression in a Tuesday meeting. Two people who could just clear the air in a 15-minute conversation will spend a whole quarter circling each other like they're in a lab. It's like high school all over again. Everybody scanning, everybody performing, everyone convinced that they're being watched, except now the stakes feel higher because it's our career, our reputation, and our coins. But here's the thing. This scanning is not a character flaw. It's hardware. Humans evolved as social animals. Being accepted by your group was once tied to survival, safety, status, resources. If you were the in group, you were closer to the fire. If you were ostracized, you were outside of the community. So the brain treats this social evaluation as important, not trivial. It reacts to perceived rejection almost like a physical threat, and it weighs negative signals heavier than positive ones. And so what we found is one critical glance, the side eye that could be misperceived in a meeting, can outweigh a dozen compliments that come in as factual data because our nervous systems don't do balanced analysis. It does threat detection. That's why when we hear, just stop caring what people think, it has never worked for anyone. We've all heard it. We inherently know it's right. Oh, I know, I shouldn't care about what people think. And yet, the moment someone says, don't think about what other people think, your brain does exactly that because of the pink elephant theory. You can't willpower your way past wiring that's been running for thousands of years. But this is where I push. Just because wiring explains the pattern doesn't mean you get to stay in the pattern. The hard wiring is context. It's not a permission slip. So what do you do with all this? Glad you asked. First, I am not telling you to stop caring, or Renita did not say stop caring. I'm offering you a different lens so you can be more accurate about what's actually happening. We all operate inside real agreements and expectations from our peers, our bosses, organizational culture. That is very real. It's a thing. The distinction I keep calling people to make is this. Is this an actual agreement that's being spoken out loud, or is this a hypothesis I'm treating like a rule? For example, nobody wants my idea. Okay. Is that feedback someone gave you, or is that a story running in the background? Did someone look you in your eyeballs and say, I don't want your idea? Another example, I'm taking up too much space. Okay. Did someone say, limit your contribution to 10 minutes? Did someone say, save that for the one-on-one? Because that's like concrete, followable, actionable feedback. And then the one that I hear all the time, I don't want to be too much. By whose definition? Because we apply that as a blanket rule across every room, every meeting, every relationship. That's a runaway hypothesis that's been ruling every aspect of our lives. It's a hypothesis wearing the costume of a fact. And we're making career decisions, confidence decisions, identity decisions based off unverified stories. Again, I see this in coaching all the time. Someone will architect an entire sequence of steps they need to take before they can do the thing they actually want to do. For example, had someone who wanted to start bringing their authentic self more, start speaking up in meetings again. And they said, well, I need to build trust with this person first. Then I need to wait for the right moment. Then I need to prove I can do X, Y, and Z first. And then I need to make sure I won't be misread. Then I need to, then I need to, then I need to. All of these steps before actually just speaking up in the damn meeting. They built a whole prerequisite chain. And when I ask where those rules came from, where did this sequence come from? The answer is the same as it always is. That's just kind of what I think. Nowhere. Because nobody actually set those conditions. They wrote the script themselves and then started treating it like a policy. My therapist told me something a few years ago that radically freed me. She said, let people be responsible for themselves. If they have feedback or information for you, let them come and give it to you directly, or you'll ask for it. Outside of that, you cannot be responsible for what you don't know. Let people be adults and tell you. I know that is a risky thing to internalize, but when I heard that, it landed like a house on me. Because it put the responsibility back where it belongs, on the people who might actually have the perception. And if they want me to do anything about their perception, they can come and tell me. Versus me spending all of this mental energy and capacity trying to decode things all the time. Now, here's where I inevitably get the pushback again. But Renita, I know how my boss thinks, or I have to go with the culture, or I want to get promoted, so I have to play the game. And maybe, yes, maybe, you probably have a strong read. But when was the last time you checked? When was the last time you changed your mind about something? Last week? Last month? If you are constantly evolving, so is everyone else. But we find ourselves operating off of old data that is months and sometimes years old, as if it's still operating as the actual information for the present. So in the absence of the iOS update of current information, go have the conversation. It can be as simple as, hey, I'm thinking about doing X. I think it could lead to Y. What are your thoughts? That's it. Go get the data. Let it either validate your hypothesis or give you something new to work with. Because either way, you have actual information and you're unstuck. Because the alternative is a holding pattern where you're calculating variables you don't have values for, and the math will never solve. So let's say you do the thing. You go get the data, and the data confirms that your perception validated what actually came out of their mouths. And it's contrary to what you want to do. So now what? Now you have a different question to sit with. Not what do they think of me, but how does this line up with who I want to be? Because at some point, the question stops being perception and starts being about identity. If we think about it, the people we admire, the ones who seem bold and creative and settled in themselves, they didn't get there by calculating what everybody else thought and then making a decision. They got there by honoring their own value system and making choices that reflected who they actually wanted to be. And quiet as it's kept, most of the conversations I'm having aren't about revolutionary acts. They're about people wanting to speak up more in meetings, wanting to bring an idea forward, wanting to stop editing themselves before the words even come out. The stakes are so much lower than your brain is telling you. A little more audacity, a little more confidence, a few more tries, that leads to progress. There's a whole lot of territory between ruffling the system and trying the thing you want to do. Most of us are standing at the beginning of that territory, convinced we are at the edge, and we are nowhere near. Here's what I've noticed about every conversation I've had about perception. The question people come in with is, how do I get other people to see me the right way? But the real question, the one that we should be asking ourselves, is always, can I trust myself again? That is the real work. So I invite you to turn the volume down on what you think everyone else is thinking and turn up the volume on your own value system. The first dial has indefinite variables you'll never solve for. The second one is yours. Try the thing, have the conversation, get the data, and trust yourself. Remember, you always have a choice. If this one landed for you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. I'll see you next time, somewhere between the leap and the land. Be brilliant.